So in the previous example, Stooge first name was Jerome. So in this case, if we assign it a new value, the value of that property will change. And in the previous example, there was no middle name in Stooge. So if we assign it a new value, a new property will be created and a new value will be assigned. Okay. And once again, let's take a look at the flight because that is more complex. So flight has arrival, departure, airline, and the flight number. So here we want to assign a new property called equipment. So flight.equipment model equals Boeing 777. So if we want to access it, flight.equipment, it's an object with model Boeing 777. And if we want to assign a new property status, it will take it. So flight, if we flight, and if we inspect this object, it has arrival, departure, equipment, status, number. And this is how the object is created and various properties, values assigned and accessed when we need it. So in another example is this example, var a equals empty, b equals empty, c equals empty. In this case, these are all three different objects. And if we create an object like this, a equals b equals c equals empty, this will create one object, an empty object. All the three will be pointing towards that. To delete, you can remove property from an object. So now if we try to access the first name of this Stooge, it will be undefined. So this is very important, that you create an object and assign all your variables to that, so that you do not conflict with other libraries. To give you an example, we are creating a my app empty object and assigning all Stooge through my app.stooge and my app.flight. So now both of our examples, my app.stooge is in the same namespace, my app, and my app.flight is also there. So this will create a namespace for all your code and it will be easy to read. Now next section is functions. Functions in JavaScript are objects, and objects are collection of name, value pairs. Since functions are objects, they can be used like any other value. Function can be stored in a variable. Function can be passed as arguments to other functions. Function in JavaScript can have methods, so functions can have its own functions. I know it's confusing, but once you start understanding these things and try to make sense, then things will get easier. Arguments are ingredients you feed into a machine called function to get finished product called value. To give you an example, I will create a function and assign it to a variable called sum. So this function will take 2 arguments and return sum of those arguments. So now I will call it sum and give 2 numbers, so it'll add them. Very simple. And another function, example of another function is say my name. I'm creating a variable called say my name, and function takes 2 arguments and alert both the arguments with 1 space. So say my name, I need to give it any name, say Sam Williams. So it will alert Sam Williams, or any 2 strings. It will alert it. And to give you another example, take an example, we can create a variable called my_num and assign it a value of 45.43. And so math dot round my_num, it will round it. Or another function or method of math is math dot max. If we give it numbers, random numbers, it will give the maximum of all the numbers we provide. Or the same thing we can do it with math dot min for minimum number. Next is scope. Scope is very different in JavaScript from other programming languages. Scope in general is, say there are a lot of tomatoes in the market and you forgot to bring the tomatoes. So when you're making salsa, you don't have tomatoes in the house. So you will have to make salsa without tomatoes, or you will have to go and get the tomatoes. To demonstrate this, I will create an object called my function, and then in that I will create a function called scope test1. So scope test1 is a function. In that function I'm defining a name Sam, and I'm console.log, which will print out the variable right here in the console. So if I go my function dot scope, so it is printing the name Sam. Now in the same object I will define another function It's my function scope test2 function console.log name. So here I did not define the variable name and I'm trying to call it. So what will happen? It is undefined. Now the variable scope is within the function in JavaScript unless you define it as global. What would have happened if instead of using var, so let me give you another example. This time I will scope test3 function name equals Sam. I did not write var in front and I'm outputting the name console.log, and the way I will call this is my function dot scope test3. So it has Sam. Now in scope test2 I did not define name. So let's see what happens if I call this function now. It is able to say Sam. The reason it is able to say Sam because without the keyword var, the name is now assigned to window. So if I go window dot name, it will say Sam. So this name became a global variable. This is very dangerous because if there is there are a lot of JavaScript files and libraries running on a page, and you start polluting the global namespace, and there can be conflicts and there will be bugs because the values of variables will be changed where they shouldn't have changed. So each tag delivers a compilation unit that is compiled and immediately executed. Statements tend to be executed in order from top to bottom. A block is a set of statements wrapped in curly braces. Blocks do not create a new scope for variables. Variables should be defined at top of the function, not in blocks. JavaScript does not have block scope. Everything it's in its syntax suggests that it does, and this confusion can be source of errors. JavaScript does have function scope. That means that the parameters and variables defined in a function are not visible outside of the function, and that a variable defined anywhere within a function is visible everywhere within the function. Another important thing to note is JavaScript adds semicolon at the end of each line, so this code will not work because once it sees return, it will add a semicolon here and this will not be interpreted. So make sure it is like this. Callback. Callback is like giving your subordinate instructions. Clean this table once you're done, then make me some coffee. Wrong way of implementing a callback is request. Prepare the request. Response equals send request. And after the request, display response. So in this case, the browser will wait or hang up until the response is returned. The correct way of implementing a callback is request, prepare the request, send request, and this is the request here. and then we are giving it a function. This is callback function. So once this request will be completed, this function will be executed. So we are giving a response, whatever response comes, we are giving it to this function, and we are displaying the function for now. To give you an example, let me define a function. What this function does, the name of this function is my function. All it does is it logs a message in the console and it says still working. So set timeout, I am giving this function a callback. Set timeout to run my function after 4 seconds. Okay. Or I will run my function every 2 seconds, set interval. So every time 2 seconds are over, my function will run. So it will keep on adding until the way to stop this is clear timeout and give the ID of interval ID, which I assigned here. We will see more examples of callback functions in Ajax. Let's move on to events. Okay. So here with jQuery we are selecting class 1, which is this one here, attaching a click handler, giving it a function, and that function is logging the text 1 clicked. That's all it is doing. So whenever I click this, it logs 1 clicked. Other time. And another way of doing the same thing is let me refresh the page. This time I'm using the bind function of jQuery, where I'm selecting class 1. If you go into the elements, you will see this is the class 1 here, and bind click function, giving it a function, what it needs to do. So this function, all it does is console.log 1 clicked with bind. It will write this message in the console. Okay. So the way to unbind the click, so now if we click, it does not log any message because the event has been removed. So another way to bind is, so in this I'm binding click and giving it a name, camp, and 1 click with it will log 1 click with click.camp bind. So it will give the message, and now if I need to unbind it, I can unbind click.camp. So in this way, if there are multiple clicks handlers on a page, you can unbind individual one. So if on this there was another click handler it could have stayed on, it would just unbind the click.camp. Okay, for another example, double click. This one, the class 2a double click function console.log to double clicked. So it will bind a double click event to this class right here. Let me double click. Let me try one more time. Okay, to double clicked. Okay. And the same with the bind. And for hover test, let me refresh this page so that I take off the click handlers I've attached to other elements. So as this function, it attaches a hover. The first function is run when you mouse over, it will console log hover in, and the second function is run when we hover out. So it will console.log hover out. So hover in, and as we move away, it will say hover out. Okay. So this the hover function accepts two functions. You could define a functions outside this and assign it here too. So hover in, hover out. So first function on hover in, second function on hover out. Excuse me. And for submit, for submit, it will get the input and on focus it will run a function. In this case, we are just console.log in focus now. So as we go there, it will say in focus now. And on blur, so we are selecting that input field, and on blur we will run the function console.log out of focus now. So as we focus, it will say in focus now, focus away, out of focus. Now to add class, this element right here we will manipulate. We will add a new class to it, and in my CSS I have defined a wider area for that and different background color. So let's see what happens. I'm attaching I'm adding new class to add ID. If you want to take a look, so it is a add ID, and I will add a class here so that the styling will change. And same way we can remove the class. Okay. Now attributes. So we will select the ID a link and ask for the attributes href. It is saying it has attribute Yahoo. So attribute, you can get the existing attribute, or you can give a second argument to change it to this. So here I will change it to Google from Yahoo. So now this will go to Google because we changed the attribute. Okay. Now Ajax. So with Ajax you can get some content from the server. I created a function to handle the return data. So my function is a function response console.log response, and then get the content, and we get the content and pass the function, so that function will run. To give you an example, a wrapper, so this is the element I'm attaching a click handler. When you click, it will send a Ajax to data.html. On success, we will run this function. This function will get data. Data is whatever comes back, and there is a class result on this page. In the result, we will place the data whatever it comes in. So let's run it and click on this. So this is the new content which came back. So once we clicked, the request was made to this, and whatever data came back, this function received it, and in the result class that data was placed. So in order to give you another look at what is going on, let me show you one more time. So we will go to this time to network, and now click on this, and you see this data.html came back. If you take a look, so this is the response which came, data.html. Okay, and now instead of a regular HTML, if you want to get a JSON, let's go to console. So now when I click, whatever comes in will be passed to this function, and it will log the data.firstname, data.lastname. That I know because I have placed this data in a file, so I know that has a first name and last name. And so this is how we will access it or place it wherever we need to place it. In further videos, I will go a little more in detail, and thanks for watching this video.